And this wouldn't be a problem if resources could be made up as easily as a binary code, but the amount of firewalls in programming with software engineers are nowhere near to the value of what real materials are made out from. And the more that, stuff is being used as if it's all just a giant simulation because we're on flat Earth, is really a doomsday scenario. The importance of photoelectric effect and Brownian motion is that they're constants, and then they can be read even larger scales, even if they're being damped down. For example, saying something is dangerous just because it's got a prescribed quantity that most people haven't even known for. Caffeine in 2 milligrams will kill you. Zinc, if you've got a lot of it, it's going to go into your kidney and kill you. But anyone who doesn't have enough minerals in their body, it's bye-bye. And then the problem with older people is that you can't absorb enough into your stomach, and so that is kind of like the photoelectric effect, but a bit different. With more torque and resonance, you get able to achieve things that would seem not possible in the first place. There's Christians who, in the olden days, were so amped up that they were dancing on the pew's edges. This type of thing. We're in Japan, they've got these engines of vehicles that can run 100 miles off 1 gallon because they understand high energy and how schematically it's dealt with. Nowadays, when there is obstruction for no meaning, and then you've got the other end fabricating to accomplish nothing. It's the same as like the devil in the detail and the madness behind the mayhem. The devil's cut off from God, so there's nothing of like the creator, anything that's being created or original that he has part in for eternity. And you can look at that as just what death is. And so if you're propping that up, there's nothing cool about it. And what this means is so when tires slap the road, if you're listening and you notice, there can be like this cracks or a rock in the road, and when it hits it, it makes this noise that is really, fine-tuned. This is because torque and resonance are interplaying. So in a photoelectric effect, this is what I meant. The further scaling of resonance and torque, they're at either ends of the scale, but the more that you're able to achieve them from the middle, they start interweaving. And this is with what, how brilliant it is. When there's a motorcycle on the ground and it achieves that same slap from like a crack in the road or a rock, when the rubber is like grinding on it, but then a rock gets hit, the person on the motorcycle, it can actually feel it and press upon in different ways to interplay with the rock or the crack in the road. And this is like a really feeling that people on motorcycles, they're called murder cycles because they're so dangerous, but they would argue that like it's worth the ride on the wild side. And so this is just because you're closer to the road than you're in a vehicle. So it's like a wheelbarrow you could do the same work with a wheelbarrow that you could do with the teeter-totter. You'd be like showed off, and it would be a lot more easier to be hands-on. So how many things are psychoactive in minerals? It's zinc. If you take over 200 milligrams, you'll like piss green and have a really good time. Chloroquine is psychoactive as well. How many things are psychoactive, and how is that relatable to? And at the start of lockdown, it's instead of torque and resonance, think of debt and printing money. The Congress all meets and they're like, well, we're going to print out more money, and that's going to cover all the debt that all this sickness is doing. And we got to do this for American people. But it's seizing out the money, where if companies don't abide what the federal government wants them to do, they're not going to get any of the funds or anything. And then you have a different look at what collateral and then all this proxy war stuff is, with how a governor would say, well, there's no measure too strong, and then having martial law clean the rest. So maybe looking at all the minerals and makeups of. So I'm trying to come out in the middle. Is just when Elon Musk said he's been in the middle the whole time. It's just the left has fallen so far off the cliff that now he's considered right, or the right side, right wing. But how about the left wing? Their argument would be, we all need to take care of each other. You know, who's going to argue something like that? But when it's to the degree of a license free, how many doctors would be taking care of only as much as they're willing to put out there without having a license be taken for caring too much? And it's just the same degree as when they say doctors in law. Well, law and health are two different things, and when you're intermitting them, stuff that comes out of the blue or out from the woodwork would be one and the same. And so all of a sudden you're talking about hairline fractures and how much just bringing flowers to it, because it's such a science that anything said in that combination would be great. And then Roe v. Wade comes into play when, you know, to them it would make sense because it's along the same lines of a hairline fracture and a flower. The science between one compensating for the other, and then to them they think, well, this would be a great idea of talking about things that I like to give and take. And then with cortisone, some person took cortisone in their foot and now they can't walk on it, and too much of it. So there's certain things where you can break down and make a whole landscape about things that should be dangerous, and then things that you know what you're getting into. It'd be kind of kooky if outdoors you saw a corner and it was, as you know, like a corner inside of a building, but you would be outdoors. This graphic representation is one of the landscapings that you can do if you break down what types of medicines there are before you get into them. So torque and then resonance are two things that are super important when it comes to predictability. Because if you have the right conditions and then just blast it with a whole bunch of energy, it's gonna do telltale signs of torquing and resonancing. It would be important to note what they are, but first you've got to know they both entail things that are when Hollywood does special effects. This in mind. There's one more briefing that you've got to note, is that an electric grid, a SPY grid, is inevitable. However, it's nothing more than the following. If you have the most fantastic chess game ever played in the world. But then you had that same exact game played over any other game. Obviously, it's gonna be not the best game because it already was once. And so it would be easier to like beat each time because the randomization isn't the same as the one specific game. And so that's how much it is